practice courage by speaking truth to power. There's three proverbs that say similar things. There's Edmund Burke, who said the only thing necessary for evil to triumph is for good people to do nothing. The other one that I love is an old French proverb that says, if you don't do politics, then politics will be done unto you. And the third one from Plato's Republic, paraphrase, not a perfect quote, but those who choose to not be involved in the democratic process will suffer the consequence of being governed by their inferiors. And so all three proverbs point to citizen engagement, citizen involvement. We cannot we cannot kind of sit back and hope that things will get better. But when citizens roll up their sleeves and become involved, federally, provincially, municipally, school board level, it's great to see what the results are. I mean, in Alberta, where you and I live, we saw a freedom movement remove Jason Kenney from office and replace him with Danielle Smith. And that was done by freedom-minded Albertans who got involved in the political process, took out a membership in a political party, and exercised their voting rights as party members. And so it's up to us, really. Dr. Jordan Peterson said once, tyrants need slaves in order to rule. and slaves look to tyrants for leadership and guidance. And there's this very sick relationship. So we can choose to not be the slaves who are saying, oh, I want a sense of meaning and purpose, and I want to be told what to do and what to think and how to live. If that's the kind of people we are, we will end up being ruled by tyrants. But if we are awake and assume responsibility for our lives and assume responsibility for what is going on politically in our country, then we're not going to be ruled over by tyrants.
Mm-hmm. This is one of the key messages of the book too, isn't it? And you talk about, you identify some of the problems that are with the judiciary, problems in the way that the governments certainly addressed what was called the COVID-19 pandemic. You talk about some of the lasting implications of that for society, but you also offer some solutions. Some ways to prevent this from ever happening again. And you just mentioned one of them, citizen engagement, but you have some other ideas about how to prevent this type of deprivation of liberty from happening again. Do you want to cover those a little bit? Because I think this is an important aspect of the book that actually differentiates it from some of the other books that really only talk about problems.
Well, in no particular order of importance, but parents need to care not only for the bodies of their children, but for their minds, their souls, their spirits as well. If your kids are going to a school where your son is getting told that he might be a girl, or he could be a girl, or he could become a girl if he wanted to, if this is the garbage, the destructive, dangerous ideology that's being presented to children, take your kids out of that school, homeschool them, put them in private school. And I know that's asking for a lot. I know there's lower income families and mom and dad are both working and it's hard, but we really have to protect the minds, souls, and spirits of our children. That's extremely important. We have to educate ourselves. We need to support independent media like the Rebel and True North, the Epoch Times, the Western Standard, and Counter Signal. So many of these groups, give them their $10 a month, $12 a month, $8 a month to keep them in business, because they are educating the public and getting the other side out and putting forward things that you will never find on the government-funded media. The other big one is to practice courage by speaking truth to power. Related to that, don't be intimidated by name calling. The moment somebody starts calling you racist, sexist, homophobic, transphobic, hateful, misogynist, anti-science, the moment that they start calling you names, I know it hurts, it stings. You and I have, Leighton, you and I have thick skins, but most people don't. So I know it's hard. But in a way, it's a compliment. The person who's calling you a name is admitting that they do not have an intelligent argument against your position. So when you hear the name calling start, it's like, okay, I've won the debate. They don't have something intelligent to say to refute my argument, but it does take courage to persist through that, because I know for most people don't have rhinoceros skin, and it's really hard, right? When somebody starts calling you racist, sexist, other things, it's very, very debilitating. But we got to move through that and keep on speaking the truth, and then persevere with that over time. And that's one of the necessary things for turning the country around.
Mm-hmm. John, we've known each other for about 5 years, or I've known you for about 5 years. I don't know you extremely well, but if I was going to have to describe you in 2 words, one of them would be fearless, which is interesting because you've written a book about fear. But I'd also describe you as someone who's faithful. You're very loyal to your causes. You're loyal to the people whom you work with. And so I'm interested to know, you said that you're thick-skinned, and I know that's true, but obviously you have a very deep, abiding faith, and that comes through in everything that you've done. I mean, you've been fighting these battles on the front lines at tremendous personal cost. You've really endured a lot. But what comes through in your book, and I don't know if this is intentional or not, but there's a sort of faith, a sense of faith that is in your book. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about, or if you wouldn't mind talking about, how your faith has guided you through this period that you describe in the book, and also how that has guided some of your decision making, and also guides the way you think about Canada. I mean, you still, even through all of this, in your book emerges kind of an optimistic view of the future. So I wonder if you wouldn't mind just talking about how your faith ties into all that.
Yeah, you've raised quite a few different points in that question. My background is that I was very profoundly, even though indirectly, marked by the Second World War. My grandparents in the Netherlands suffered through the Nazi occupation of the Netherlands. It lasted 5 years. It was very hard. And so I was born in 1967, so only 22 years after World War II ended. So really, in the big picture, not long after World War II. And I grew up hearing the stories, and they were profoundly marked by this. But I deeply admire their courage and perseverance in just sticking it out and seeing it through. Times are really hard. And my grandmother once told me, if it wasn't for her faith in God, she pointed to this high place. She said she would have committed suicide. And it was just very, very hard. And so I'm a student of history, and I think history does there's ebbs and flows and waves and ups and downs, and we cannot single-handedly control history. However, we owe it to ourselves and to our children, or even if we don't personally have children, we owe it to future generations to do our best to stand up for what is true and right. And in the short term, it doesn't, it might not pay off in the short run. Some of your viewers and listeners may have heard of the story of Sophie Scholl, who was a teenager who was active in Nazi Germany with the anti-Nazi resistance, which was a life-threatening or life-endangering activity, because if you got caught, you would be executed. And she and her older brother, they were caught and they were executed for having handed out flyers that the regime disliked. But okay, so it didn't end well for them personally, but there's just this power that like they stood up for what's true and right. And now we look back 100 years or about 80 years later, and it's like, you know what? Sophie Scholl was right. And so I think that's just our obligation, is to do our best to stand up for truth, speak truth, and fight for justice.